Welcome to the Gen X Journey podcast. Dive into all things important to Gen Xers, from advice on aging parents, expert interviews, product reviews, and heartfelt conversations. So put down the joystick, grab your Walkman, dust off your old yearbooks, and welcome to the Gen X Journey.
Everybody, welcome back to the Gen X Journey podcast. We are back with episode 2 about which is a series of 3 episodes about the Live Aid concert. Hope you enjoyed episode 1. Super stoked about sharing this really cool story today. We're going to turn it over to Keith because we've been talking about this special story, I think, for at least a year.
It has
when
been
we
a
first
year.
started planning ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so, all right, Keith, take it away and tell us about this awesome moment.
Absolutely. So there are many, many iconic moments in the history of the Live Aid concert. I think one that kind of gets lost in the shadows from the Bohemian Rhapsodies and all of the other concerts that are part of this is the legendary day that one of my favorite artists of all time had, and that artist was Phil Collins. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the story leading up to Live Aid, and then I'm going to turn it over to y'all to kind of continue this. But this is an epic event that happened that I don't know, at least in the near future, if it's going to truly be able to be duplicated again. It was basically the story of Phil Collins being everywhere all at once, which is amazing to talk about. So let me kind of start off, and I'm going to talk a little bit directly from if you recall, the Phil Collins actually got his start in the band Genesis. And so I went to the Genesis page to get the basics of how this amazing moment for Phil Collins happened. And so when basically reading a little bit of the Genesis webpage, in the mid 1980s, it seemed that Phil Collins had already achieved everything. We could all agree we've talked to this in previous episodes. He was everywhere. Mm-hmm. As a solo artist and also as a member of Genesis, he had #1 hit singles, chart-topping albums, and sold-out world tours. By 1985, his third solo album, No Jacket Required, had been a massive success and produced hit singles that topped charts worldwide. He was all over the world, and so absolutely would he be on the day of Live Aid on July 13th, 1985. So the story about what led up to this is Phil Collins actually played the drums. We talked in the last episode about the Band-Aid single, Do They Know It's Christmas? Phil Collins actually was the person that played the drums on that million selling track.
Oh, wow.
But here's the interesting part. So when it was recorded on November 25th, 1984, he did not sing on it at all because he had recently recorded his own studio album that was his solo album and duets with Philip Bailey and Eric Clapton. And the record company basically just said, absolutely not. You need to not sing anymore until the No Jacket Required album had come out to promote the tour that followed. So interesting story that he was on this Live Aid or this Band-Aid, Do They Know It's Christmas, but he was not allowed to sing at all. And so I think what he said was the British version of Hold My Beer after that and said, let me show you what I can do as a result of this. So he basically found his opportunity to lend his voice to the cause the following year. So Noel, tell us a little bit more about what led up to this.
So on July 13th, 1985, Live Aid became one of the most iconic moments in music history. It was a global event held simultaneously in London and Philadelphia to raise funds for famine relief in Ethiopia. Of course, if you listen to the first episode in this series, you probably already know that.
Yeah.
And if you haven't, here's your chance to go back and listen to that episode. It's really good. It gives you a lot more than I'm about to give you here. But anyway, Live Aid brought together the era's most prominent artists in an unprecedented act of solidarity and spectacle. Among them stood Phil Collins, whose role in the day's events would become legendary. So while he was on tour in the United States, Collins was approached by Robert Plant, who invited him to perform at the Philadelphia concert. Around the same time, Sting, former frontman of the Police, also reached out and asked him to join him on the stage in London. Without hesitation, Collins agreed to both invitations, but The logistical reality of performing at 2 concerts an ocean apart seemed at best wildly ambitious. Undeterred, producers produced a daring plan with a carefully adjusted performance schedule, the 5-hour time difference between London and Philadelphia, and a flight aboard the supersonic Concorde. Collins might just pull off the impossible. Then the plan was executed with military precision.
And this is all coming from one of the pages that was talking about this event. So we might be reading a little bit of it as it is. So I will give credit to the places that we got this from, just so y'all know.
Yeah. So Collins, he performed with Sting at London's Wembley Stadium at 2 p.m. on a bill that included Queen, The Who, and Paul McCartney. He appeared at Wembley Stadium in London in the early afternoon and played Against All Odds and In the Air Tonight alone with the piano. It was blisteringly hot, the white stage. It was so hot, and I made a terrible mistake. And this is Collins talking on Against All Odds on the piano. Phil remembers, I thought, oh, God, what a good start for the day this is. Then the bum note was not only heard in front of 80,000 people in Wembley, but also across a global tele audience of 1 billion people.
Yeah, no pressure.
Yeah, no pressure.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, I mean, I would nail that.
Oh,
every
sure.
single time.
I do it in my sleep.
Like right now, let's go.
Yeah, the wrong note heard around the world.
Yeah, if you remember the background, that whole background was basically like this big white curtain that went across, and the performers really popped out, with that background. But then after that intro, then he was joined by his friend Sting on guitar and vocals for A Long, Long Way to Go, off No Jacket Required. Sting had also provided backing vocals for the studio version.
Yeah, Sting was on that album a lot. It was really interesting. The more I listened to it, like on some of those, lot of really famous artists on that song and Take Me Home too.
Yeah. Then the duo played Every Breath You Take.
That was cool. So they traded Phil Collins tune for a Police tune, which is kind of neat.
Yeah, yeah. Or Keith, when you take it.
Yeah. So then that was basically the Wembley version. And so here's where it gets interesting. Immediately after they finished that song, he boarded a helicopter at Wembley Stadium, bounded for London Heathrow Airport, where the Concorde awaited. So at that point, he flew on a British Airways Concorde. The flight of that Concorde was flight BA 195 from London Heathrow to the JFK Airport in New York. So in just over 3 hours, he crossed the Atlantic, he actually attempted a live in-flight audio transmission to Philadelphia, kind of a gesture that despite some glitches, kind of underscored the magnitude of the day, but didn't really go off as good as they had hoped. But still, I mean, you're trying some technological things that have never been done before. Like we're doing a supersonic flight and trying to do a live feed. It doesn't work as easy.
This is 1985.
Right, yeah. It's not streaming with Starlink, right?
I gotta say though, I'm like amazed that this was a commercial flight. Like
I know.
It wasn't. I mean, I guess even Phil Collins couldn't charter the Concorde, but it'd be my luck. I'm trying to pull off this feat and it'd be delayed or something or
exactly. It would be the day that it did, right?
Yeah, exactly. Anyway.
Yeah, no. So he tried to do that. But anyway, he ended up landing in New York at New York JFK Airport. Now remember, where was the concert? It wasn't Philadelphia. It was in Philadelphia, right? So he lands in New York on this Concorde after a 3-hour flight. Then he continued his breakneck journey with another helicopter ride to Philadelphia. And he basically arrived just in time to take the stage for his important performance in Philadelphia at 8 p.m. Eastern time, where he addressed the audience by saying, I was in England this afternoon. Funny old world, isn't it? Just when he was sitting down at the piano. Kind of funny. So he first performed with Eric Clapton, and they both performed White Room, She's Waiting, and Layla on Eric Clapton's Ticket. Then he sat down at the piano, and he did the same songs that he did on his solo flight in Wembley. So those same 2 songs. And then finally, as part of a long-awaited reunion tour, he actually got up and announced the reunion of Led Zeppelin during that moment. And
That's
then
awesome.
he, obviously John Bonham, who was Led Zeppelin's most famous, well, probably arguably with the best drummer ever in rock history, passed away. So Phil Collins decided that he would take the mantle and be the drummer for that event. And they performed the rock and roll, A Whole Lot of Love, and Stairway to Heaven. And honestly, the performance was really bad. I mean, there was a lot of factors that was talking about it. Some of the Led Zeppelin band blamed Collins for not being fully prepared. They kind of under-commented, well, he's been on a flight and traveling instead of practicing. But, Robert Plant's voice was kind of shot. So there was a lot of things. They hadn't rehearsed together. So interestingly enough, on the Live Aid recorded CD, that is not even an act that was on and included in that set, which is ironic.
Oh, wow.
One of the most famous bands in history was not included on that. Oh, sorry, not the CD, the DVD release of Live Aid. So interestingly enough, Led Zeppelin was not included on the DVD release of Live Aid because it was so poor. So that tells you something anyway. But I mean, think about it. So, this guy decides that he's keeping his promise with both people on two different sides of the earth and doing a concert that's a simultaneous concert. So he performs in one place, and then like you're watching this on TV. Think about this. Like, you don't know if you're watching this as kids, right? And we're watching this show, and we're watching Wembley, and Phil Collins is performing with these famous people, Eric Clapton and the like, and Sting. And then like a couple of hours later, you're like, something wrong with the TV? Are they re-recording this, or what's going on? Because Phil Collins is on stage now again, but he's not there. He's in Philadelphia performing with Led Zeppelin, and it's just like and Eric Clapton. Like, so how I mean, if you don't know what's going on, that's mind-boggling to think that this guy was in London and then 3 hours later performing in Philadelphia. And you talk about that's just crazy. Gives you the energy that what Phil Collins had in the 80s, Yeah, and I just think there, like I said, there is a lot of really cool concert stuff, but this one is one of those stories that I don't think gives enough attention. And maybe I'm biased because he's one of my favorite artists ever, but I so excited to hear about this story. Like I said, we've been talking about this. It's probably July of last year, saving it up for the 40th anniversary. But I will post it. I have a really cool picture of Phil Collins getting on the Concorde in London, looking at his watch going, okay, time's ticking. We got to go. So we'll post that on our social media pages, just kind of anticipation of this episode. But what are your thoughts? I mean, that's crazy. I don't know. The Concorde doesn't exist anymore. I don't think it's going to be until another hypersonic flight or supersonic airplane gets to the market that something like this can happen again.
Yeah.
Other than virtually, right?
Speaking of the Concorde, it would cruise at Mach 2.04, which is 1,354 miles an hour.
Wow, that's crazy.
Which is pretty dang fast.
Yeah.
It remember it had its iconic the droop nose. It lowered during takeoff so that the pilot had better visibility, and also drooped for landing too. So for the same reason, so you could see the pilots could see the ground. And then at supersonic speeds, the skin temperature reached 260 degrees Fahrenheit. Wow. So it actually grew 6 to 10 inches longer in flight due to expansion from the heat. So
that's crazy.
That's nuts. But and of course it had the end of its life was in 2000. An Air France Concorde crashed shortly after takeoff, killing all on board. And then the rising costs of maintaining it and just kind of declining demand for it too was retired in 2003. But it was not cheap to fly on the ticket or fly on the Concorde. You guys want to take a guess at how much a round trip ticket would cost?
I'd say
to fly on?
Like from London, let's say from London to New York, probably $2,000.
Steve?
I'm going to toss a crazier number, say like 8 to 10,000.
$12,000.
Wow.
So it was not cheap. So for that reason, I mean, there was just the clientele was basically celebrities, royalty.
Phil Collins.
Phil Collins. So anyway, that's I thought that was kind of cool. Just drop a few Concorde facts in there. So
I'll tell you, I got to see a Concorde in the air for a brief moment when we went to the Texas Tech band that I was in, that we all were in. We got to go march in the Dublin St. Patrick's Day parade, but we had a stopover and visited London for a little while. And I remember it was a cloudy day. And I was walking in downtown London somewhere. I don't even know where we were. But anyway, I heard this really strange noise, not like anything I'd ever heard, a very loud, roaring, weird whooshing sound. And I just happened to look up, and like I'm talking, like if I didn't see it, and nobody else saw it, they probably wouldn't think, probably would think I was lying, but I looked up and the clouds separated just enough for me to see the Concorde fly over my head, like for just 2 seconds. And that was it. And it was like so amazing. Like it was literally directly over. I looked straight up and it was like right there for 2 seconds. And then the clouds covered it again. And it was like the coolest thing. I'm like, I got to see a Concorde, you know, it really, I mean, it's so distinct looking. There's no mistaking it, you know, as a cool plane, but that was a fun thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was curious, I was wondering, like, is it possible to see the Led Zeppelin performance of Live Aid anywhere since it wasn't on the DVD release? And so for our listeners, if you're curious about that performance, it is on YouTube.
Interesting.
And just, pop that into the search and I'll watch that after we get done.
Absolutely.
Today. I'm very curious to hear that performance.
Yeah, I am too. Very interesting. That's cool. But anyway, that's the story of Phil Collins. So I'm glad we got to relay that. And again, like we talked about last episode, I know Noel had looked up some things too on ChatGPT, just kind of anticipation of some of the things we're discussing. Just ask ChatGPT, what are some unique things that happened in this concert series? We've mentioned this last episode, but do it. I would be interested if you would post in the comments on our Facebook page some of the things that maybe you uncovered about this historic event, because there's so many things that we're not talking about because we could go on for days. So share with us what you discovered, some unique things. We'd love to hear it.
You bet.
Cool.
All right. And then stay tuned for our top Live Aid performances that will be airing next Friday in anticipation for the 40th anniversary of Live Aid, which will be that Saturday. So we look forward to talking with you then.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in the Gen X Journey podcast belong solely to the hosts and guests and do not necessarily represent the views or opinions of any entity they are associated with. The information provided is for entertainment and informational purposes only and should not be considered professional advice. Listeners are encouraged to seek the advice of qualified professionals for any specific issues they may face. The creators and contributors of this podcast make no representations as to the accuracy, completeness, or validity of any information, and will not be liable for any errors, omissions, or any losses, injuries, or damages arising from its use.